For many years now, I've wanted a sandblasting cabinet, and I really never had enough room to just set one aside and use it when I needed it. So I've made a lot of sacrifices over the time of trying to find different ways to sand off rust and paint. And recently, we moved into a place that has a little bit of a larger shop, and I can totally accommodate one of these. So I waited for the first 25% off coupon at Harbor Freight and went out and bought one. Now, the one I bought is a 40-pound capacity full floor blast cabinet, and I understand that these are not the best cabinets in the world. Harbor Freight sometimes sells lower quality products. However, there are some modifications that I have seen other people do that you can do to this cabinet to make it a pretty cool cabinet. Now, I'm not going to bore you and assemble this cabinet on video. I think all of you out there are do-it-yourself type people, and you can follow the directions yourself. However, I did want to show you all of these parts laid out so you can get a concept or an idea of how many parts and pieces there really is to putting one of these cabinets together. Now, one of the complaints I do see online is people complain about the lighting, but in my particular kit, it actually has an LED light bar. Now, I did pop the cap off the end and take a look inside because at first glance I thought maybe it was a compact fluorescent light, but it is not. It is indeed a LED light bar. So I'm kind of excited about that. Once we assemble this cabinet, we'll see how well it does. So I've assembled the cabinet, and I'm going to tell you it was kind of tedious work. It was a little more work than I expected. There's just a lot of bolts to deal with, and I'm not talking about 35 or 40. There's literally over 100 bolts to put this cabinet together, and it's just tedious work. And you kind of got to reach around and get to certain places that are very difficult to get to. So if you have somebody that can help you, that actually might speed the process up. I was able to put it together myself. I had to get a little creative on reaching some of the nuts and bolts and pieces and parts to get it together, but it is together and everything is tightened, and I've actually used it to clean up a few parts, and we'll go over that in a little bit. But I do want to point some things out with this cabinet that I can tell you right now is going to have to change. First modification is going to have to be a reseal. You can see down here in the corner, looks like I spilt some media. I did not. It actually come out of the corner, and if you look on the back corner, that one's leaking. This corner's leaking a little bit, but not too bad, but the back corner back here is leaking a little bit too. Now they give you a kind of a foam gasket to seal everything up, and you can see I did use it everywhere that it was necessary to use it. It's just not doing the job good enough. Now, the modification I see everybody do online, I completely understand now, is they take a little bit of caulking and they go around all the corners. So that modification is going to happen. Now, something else worth mentioning is the door on the bottom of this funnel. Now, this is used to change the media, but I want to tell you that this particular mechanism that locks this flapper door up is pretty sloppy, and I imagine it would be easy for vibrations or somehow to accidentally open it up. So I put a zip tie around mine just so I would not accidentally spill my media all over the garage floor. Now, speaking of media, I'm using Black Diamond. Now, I found this in a local tractor shop. We have TSCs around here, and this is a coal slag, very fine, and it works really well in this machine. This bag is a 50-pound bag, and one bag seemed to work well for me. Now, I originally put crushed walnut that I picked up from Harbor Freight into the machine. Now, it was a coarse crushed walnut, but it kept jamming up in the gun, and it really did not work that well. Now, something else that's common with these cabinets are, as you're sandblasting, sometimes you etch the bottom of the glass. And I shouldn't say sometimes, you pretty much always etch the bottom of the glass. Eventually, it just gets foggy and you can't see it through it anymore. And Harbor Freight's answer to this is a clear piece of plastic, and they give you some extras that you just tape on the bottom. So when this gets kind of beat up, it's more like a screen protector. You rip it off, put another one on, and you go again. So that's an option there. Now, some people find that they just would rather just replace the glass. And glass is cheap, so you can always buy a new sheet of glass at the hardware store for a few bucks and just go again. But that's totally up to you. I'll probably use the protectors because I have them, and when I run out of protectors, who knows, maybe I'll replace my glass too. Something else I noticed was it didn't take very long at all to sandblast a part in here, and after a few minutes it was just so dusty and cloudy it was hard to see. Now, they do give you a LED light, which I was pretty surprised to see. It's a short LED light bar, but quite frankly it's just not bright enough. So I will be adding some bigger lights to this machine, something that really lightens it up so I can see through the dust. And speaking of dust, they also have a reclaim kit that you can buy from Harbor Freight that basically takes all of the dusty smokes and cloud and filters it out and puts a little bit clean air back into the machine so that you can see a little better as you're blasting. So we're going to look into some of those options as well. Now, I have the air compressor set at 50 psi. And we're going to see what 50 psi does on a rusty tractor cap. This is a gas cap off one of my tractors. And I'm using a diamond black coal slag, very fine abrasive. So let's see what we can do here. And as you can see, it doesn't do bad. We'll pull this out of the cabinet. The whole point of the cabinet is it keeps all of the dust and particles inside so you're not breathing it. It also keeps those particles from smacking you in the face and then in the body and everywhere else. It's just really messy to sandblast something, but if you can keep it contained in a cabinet like this, it makes it that much easier. So let's pull this out and we'll take a better look at it. Now, I've done a little more work before bringing this back to the workbench to show you some details on this. And you can see this is an extremely rusted out cap. Quite honestly, you can buy these pretty inexpensively online and replace them. And I really have no intentions on cleaning this cap and using it. I just strictly stuck it in the cabinet to show you guys how well to clean something that's really rusty. Now, I stopped right here at this line, as you can see. But one thing I wanted to point out, and this is where an abrasion cabinet comes in handy, is when you have something that has ridges. And this has these little ridges all the way around it, so you can grab a hold of it with your fingers and unscrew this cap, of course. But having rust inside those ridges is very hard to treat. You pretty much need, like a wire wheel. That'll do it if you have a wire wheel on a tool or something like that. But you can't really sand it because you'll sand the ridges off. You could use a navel jelly and kind of keep working it in the grooves, and that would work too. But with the cabinet, you can just kind of spray it out within a few minutes and clean it up. Now, if I were to keep this cap, and I'm not, but if I were to keep it, I think I would probably wipe it down with some rust converter, let it sit, and then shoot a can of paint on it, and it would be fine. It would hold up just fine in the weather, and it would be okay. I want to show you another thing that I wish I'd have showed you before, but this had been laying around in the bed of the truck, and it was completely rusty, this particular tool. And I spent about maybe 5 minutes just shooting it with the blaster, and it cleaned up really well. I was pretty impressed with that. Then I thought, well, I got some tools that are all rusted out. So I had a set of linesman pliers that were just completely rusted out. And you can see it did a really good job. Now, it dolled the metal up a little bit because it's a fairly, abrasive process. But they turned out really good, and I wiped them down with some oil, so they should be around a long time. And I had a pair of needle nose pliers that was all rusted out, and I shot that with the blast cabinet. It worked out pretty well, too. Still some pretty heavy pitting, and I didn't spend a lot of time on this to clean it up. But it does a good job, specifically for those small parts that you really want to get every little nook and cranny cleaned up. A blast cabinet is pretty much a good answer for that. So my final thoughts on this product, would I buy it again? I absolutely would. I think that the steel is a little thin. I think Harbor Freight could have made it a little bit thicker. However, once you assemble everything and put it together, it seems to be okay. It's not real flimsy after the fact, I should say. Does it work? It does work. As it is in the box, it does exactly what they say it should do. It will do a good job. Is there modifications that you can do to it to make it better? Absolutely. And stick around for a video because I totally plan on reconfiguring this to make it the ultimate sandblasting cabinet. So stick around, like and subscribe, take a look at some of my other videos. You might find something that you yourself might want to build.